Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Wednesday, January the 28th, 2026. Right now, Mercury and Venus are very close together in the sign Aquarius, and both these planets are making semisquares to Saturn. If you've been watching my videos over the last few sort of weeks and months, you will know, or even years, you will know that I take semisquares and sesquiquadrates very seriously. And so I am certainly interested in the fact that Mercury and Venus, both on the same day, are making semisquares to Saturn. And I really need to go into that. I need to talk about, what this might mean. And I will come up with a few famous people, relatively famous people who might be impacted by these aspects. And, it's all about triggering. I mean, you've got a larger aspect, a transit from Saturn, and sort of Mercury and Venus come along and provide a trigger. But first of all, before I look at these aspects and transits, I want to consider the astrology and the I Ching for today. So here is the chart for today, Wednesday, January 28th, 2026, set for New York at noon. Don't forget to like and subscribe if appropriate. So as far as this chart is concerned, the moon is now in Gemini. You can see that noon, New York time, moon is at 12 degrees Gemini. So all of us, regardless of our time zone, this is where the moon is. So this does mean that we now have 6 planets in air signs. In fact, 5 of the 7 traditional planets are in air signs. So we've got and all of the personal planets, the personal planets, Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, they're all in air signs, and of course we've got Pluto in an air sign as well. So there is a lot of air around, a lot of thinking, abstraction, discussion perhaps. People have ideas and people want to communicate these ideas, perhaps with a certain amount of power. And the concept of communication is sort of illustrated by the fact that the moon is making a trine to Mars, makes a trine to the Sun, makes a trine to Mercury, trine to Venus. So moon making a lot of trines. So it may be now that the full power of those Aquarian planets is starting to manifest in terms of what people say, what people are talking about. So these aspects in air signs, it's not wonderfully emotional. The emphasis is more on the verbal and on ideas, not necessarily so much how we feel. I'm sure that we feel a great deal, but do we want to really talk about some of our deeper feelings? I think it's just better to skim over them, maybe, at least in terms of what we're talking about. And additionally, we have 2 semisquares. Now, these semisquares I will be talking about in detail later in the video, but we still need to sort of bear them in mind, perhaps as we go through the 12 signs. So we've got Mercury semisquare Saturn and Mercury Venus semisquare Saturn. So Mercury and Venus together, you can see that they're pretty close to a conjunction. There we are, Mercury at 13 degrees, 14 degrees Aquarius. In fact, they're both at pretty much 14 degrees Aquarius. So we've got a Mercury-Venus conjunction coming up. And, we can say all sorts of things about Mercury-Venus conjunctions in Aquarius. I think that they are pretty fortunate. They facilitate creativity. They facilitate communication about creativity. But then there is the semisquare to Saturn. And that semisquare to Saturn casts this Mercury-Venus conjunction in a slightly different role. It could be self-conscious. Yes, we might be able to do something very well, but we might have doubts. Can we really do it? well? What about other people? What might people say if we really were to express ourselves? So there's a lot of doubt there. And some of us might think that we're not good enough. Of course we are good enough. I mean, that Mercury-Venus conjunction is, it's a great aspect. But Saturn might undermine our confidence. So I think we need to be positive about this and say, well, if you find your confidence being undermined, or if you feel you have your doubts, or if you're feeling down for whatever reason, well, tell yourself, hey, Mercury is semisquare Saturn, Venus is semisquare Saturn. It's more of a psychological aspect in most cases. It's not necessarily about the real world. And also, of course, with Saturn, you have the concept of structure. But I'll be talking at the end of this video about those aspects in greater detail. And of course, with Venus semisquare Saturn, I've already said that today is not perhaps amazingly emotional, and with Venus semisquare Saturn, that kind of reinforces it. I mean, Venus you might regard as being a fairly emotional planet, regardless of what sign it is in, particularly when it comes to relationships. But when it's semisquare Saturn, something might get sort of blocked. So, as far as communication is concerned, I think it's best to focus on the factual and perhaps things at a surface level. Try not to get into things too deeply. That might not be such a good idea, unless, of course, it's very important. I mean, it does kind of depend on the situation. So that's the picture for New York, kind of as a representative of the Americas and to an extent Western Europe in general, Africa. But then here's a chart for, if we set the chart for Sydney, Australia, which kind of represents Australia, New Zealand, East Asia. And, in this chart, the moon is at 2 degrees Gemini. So the moon is going to be in Gemini pretty much all day. Okay, if you're up early, as you might be. I mean, I know that in Australia it's getting pretty hot, so you might not want to stay in bed for too long. So if you're up at 6 o'clock, then you're gonna have to feel the tail end of the moon in Taurus. But in general, you can regard it as a sort of a moon in Gemini day. So the main aspects, if you are in Australasia, probably that moon trine Mars, moon trine Pluto. So if you are in Australasia, then that moon in Gemini may allow you to express the full power of your personality and to really tune into your general willpower. And if you kind of want something, maybe it's going to be easier to get than you had imagined. And then there is the heliocentric view, putting the sun at the center of the solar system. And at the moment, there are sort of similarities between the geo and the helio picture. We've just looked at the geocentric charts, looking at things, heliocentrically. We've still got this Mars conjunct Pluto, and we've got Mars conjunct Pluto. Geocentrically, heliocentrically. So that very much sort of dominates proceedings, I would have said. The concept, of power and willpower, what we want to do, what we want to achieve. And additionally, we have Mercury making a sextile to Chiron. Oh, and we've got Mars trine Uranus. So, that Mars trine Uranus, I think the Mars trine Uranus was more exact yesterday, but Mars trine Uranus can be quite dynamic. We want to have an impact, and it can be easy to have an impact. And we can perhaps even turn things upside down very, very quickly without making too much effort. And that must suggest, surely, that we shouldn't overdo it. There's no need to overdo it. A little bit of force is probably enough. Maybe you don't even need to use any force at all. And then, yes, we've got Mercury sextile Chiron. So Mercury sextile Chiron, I would have said a fairly gentle aspect, but it kind of chimes with what I was saying with the moon in Gemini aspecting the Aquarius planets. It is, I think, an aspect that wants communication that wants to say something. And it being Chiron, we're thinking about expressing, who we are, expressing our particular unique view of the world without being afraid of what people are saying, what people are doing. Sometimes just things have to be said, and hopefully everything will be treated on a verbal level. What do they say? Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words may never hurt me. Or words to that effect. I think that isn't a bit of an exaggeration, but that might be the feeling of today. We should be able to say what we want because it's only just words. And of course, from a United States perspective, you think about the First Amendment. You should be able to say what you like. If people are upset, is that your problem? No, it's not. Maybe. But that's Mercury sextile Chiron. Of course, there is another side to Mercury sextile Chiron. I know this is a heliocentric rather than a geocentric chart, but with Mercury sextile Chiron, words can heal as well as disturb. That is the possibility, and this goes back to that sort of duality of comforting the disturbed and disturbing the comfortable. In fact, you could say Chiron. Thinking about Chiron in general, that phrase or that dichotomy, comforting the disturbed, disturbing the comfortable. Maybe that's a lot about what Chiron is about. There is the healing side, comforting the disturbed with Chiron, and of course here we've got Mercury sextile Chiron. The right words can have a beneficial impact, but then there is disturbing the comfortable, and that's sometimes something we want to do. And maybe with Mercury sextile Chiron, heliocentrically, if we really want to, we can upset people. We can force people to question some of their assumptions. So now I want to switch to the 12 signs. So these are my forecasts for the 12 signs for today, which is Wednesday, January the 28th, 2026. Aries. Moon is now in Gemini, and the moon, when it moves into Gemini, it makes a sextile to Mars and Pluto. So this Mars-Pluto conjunction still very, very close. We've got Mars-Pluto conjunction geocentrically, got it heliocentrically, and that very much says something about you in general. At the moment, Aries, hopefully you are very well aware of your power and your ability to create change. If you want something, there's really an excellent chance you can get it, and you just focus. It's almost in your very presence. So it's not even that you necessarily have to do anything or say anything. I want this. It's in your aura, and if you want something, you can get it. Of course, one problem here that some Arians might be feeling is that there isn't any fire. There really isn't. Okay, Neptune's gone into Aries, I know that, but Aries is, of course, a fire sign. But it's Neptune. It's a generational planet. It's not a personal planet. It's not a social planet. And so you might feel with this lack of fire that you do have to put in extra effort, and that things aren't quite as spontaneous and natural as you'd like them to be. But there are many ways of operating, and with the moon making a trine to Mars, trine to Pluto, you could say that moon in Gemini is kind of a surrogate for fire. Well, it has to be a surrogate for fire. You don't have a choice. And through the things you say and how you communicate, you can kind of maybe create some synthetic fire. Yes, it is possible. You use the right words, and it kind of comes together, and it is energetic. In your heart of hearts, it's not quite the same, but if you push it, and I don't think you actually have to push it too hard, you can really start to have an impact. And there are many ways of having an impact. It could be that it might be a clever use of facts. I mean, as an Aries, you're not someone who is necessarily obsessed about facts and factual details. You're more into the sort of the broad picture, I would have said. But facts used in the right way, used at strategic moments, can really add to your power. So if you're trying to make an impact, it just maybe you just point something out. You point out some fundamental truth, and it's obvious to everyone. How can it possibly be denied? You may not have all the facts. You may actually have fewer facts than other people, but the key point is making strategic use of those facts. So if you're in a position where you are arguing, or if you're an Aries lawyer, I think that would be quite effective. You really use that trine. I think it's going to help. And also, the moon is making, in general, the moon is making a trine to all of those Aquarius planets, and so I think that your ability to be yourself in a social environment should be quite good. I think that you can be effective. You can get people's attention, but don't have super high expectations. You can get something from other people. You can certainly get their attention, and you can, I think, as I've already said, you can be persuasive, but you kind of know their limitations. You know that there are just limits to what people can do and what people can project, and so expect some support, but don't expect total support, because some people just aren't necessarily in the mood, and this is not helped by the fact that we have Venus semisquare Saturn. So Venus is the planet of relationships, especially in the Aries chart, with Venus ruling Libra, your opposite sign. And so with Venus semisquare Saturn, some people just aren't on very good form. There's something bothering them. You're not quite sure what it is. Maybe they don't know what it is, but certainly if you're looking for sort of openness, especially on an emotional level, I don't think you're going to find it. And so you perhaps have to make some effort to understand what is happening. And don't forget, Neptune's moving into Aries, and Neptune is in Aries, and so maybe with Neptune on the Aries point, this does give you a little bit of sensitivity on a sort of a collective level. You kind of can get an idea about what is holding people back. You just know, and it's not just people in general. It may be someone you're very close to. It's something bothering you, something bothering them, and it's just it's something passing. I mean, don't worry about it too much, but don't push people too far. Yeah, you can for sure be effective, as I've already said. As I've said right at the beginning of this piece on Aries, you can be effective, you can be powerful, you can be influential, but don't expect people to go too far, because everyone has their limitations, and I think that those limitations today may be particularly obvious. Taurus. One aspect that we have got today is a semisquare between Venus and Saturn. And so Venus and Saturn, they are 45 degrees apart. So 45 degrees, that is an important angle. It's half of 90 degrees. 90 degrees is a square. It's quite dynamic. 45 degrees is also pretty dynamic. And so with Venus semisquare Saturn, you may feel that something is sort of holding you back, that you can't entirely, be yourself. You would like to be yourself. Your mind is on good form. You can you can think clearly about the important issues, but there's still something bothering you. Something is just preventing you from fully being yourself. Now it might be that you just are aware that the environment feels somewhat alien. It's not entirely sympathetic. I mean that might relate to the fact that we've got no planets in Earth signs except for Uranus in Taurus. It might also just be about other people. You expect a certain amount of support from other people. This is particularly if you're in a social environment, but it just doesn't seem to be there. And if you express your ideas and perhaps your hopes for the future, you might sort of hit a block. There may be all sorts of reasons why it can't happen, why you can't progress any further. And I don't think you can expect anyone to be too constructive. And this might get you down, and it might generate a certain amount of fear even, because Venus is it's not just making a semi-square to Saturn, it's actually making a semi-square to Neptune as well. I mean, it's okay, the semi-square to Neptune is not exact right now, but it's coming up in a few days' time. And so if Venus is semi-square both Saturn and Neptune, then there are things that seem to be worried about. There are things that appear to be of concern, and you just may feel that it's just best to hold back because you just don't know. And I think you have to get things in perspective, because if we're talking about the whole sort of Saturn-Neptune energy, there may be something going on here that is frankly irrational. It's not grounded in reality. And you don't feel much grounding at the moment because of no planets in Earth signs. So if there aren't any planets in Earth sign, you feel ungrounded, then your imagination might run away with you. Now, astrology in most cases works on a psychological level. As I like to say, in the average lifetime, there are probably 6 major events. Maybe 10, but astrologers are very good at creating events all the time, these life-shattering events. This is a turning point, this is a game changer. It doesn't usually work like that. And so much works on a psychological level from on the outside. But what's happening psychologically can also impact our behavior, and then our behavior can, of course, impact outcomes, real outcomes. And I think that there is some possibility here that you are not able to see something through on a material level or physical level, whatever you're trying to achieve in the real world, because of some worry. You're perhaps exaggerating the dangers. You think it's a real problem. You think that things are going to go wrong. You think that there are sort of unexpected things just lurking in the shadows. And I think that in most cases, it's not real. I think it could well be a figment of your imagination. Now, there's nothing wrong with being cautious, but you can be overcautious, and you need to consider the psychological dimension. And I'm saying this to be positive, because there may be moments today and tomorrow where you feel that you can't do it, when in actual fact you can. And you shouldn't forget that Mercury is moving towards a conjunction of Venus. Now, Mercury-Venus conjunction, it's a great aspect. It allows you to really present yourself in the best possible light. You'll present your ideas, present who you are, and really get your plans, off the ground. So that can all happen. I'm just warning you that something might sabotage you. In fact, you might sabotage yourself, because, all of us, it's often said, we don't want to be successful. We don't want to be in the limelight. we would perhaps at some unconscious level, I mean, if you take a sort of Freudian view, we can sabotage ourselves because we just don't want it. We don't want to be successful. We don't want to be praised. It may raise too many issues, and sometimes we just want to just sort of sit in the mud and just get depressed about things and believe it's all someone else's fault. Well, it's not. And so I'm just saying, Taurus, the moment you feel that turbulence, that negativity, that belief that things are not going to work, that is the time to really motivate yourself, to pull yourself together, to really focus. And what do you do? What kind of antidote should you be looking for? Well, there's no Earth in the chart, so maybe a good antidote is to create Earth for you. So depends on the opportunities you have. So if you're feeling a bit down about things, and you, for example, you have a garden and you can do something with plants, earth, that would be quite remedial, and just sort of half an hour of digging would just kind of make you feel a whole lot better. There are other ways of getting into earth, and thinking, just reminding yourself of the material world. Just because there are no planets in Earth doesn't mean to say that the material world has abandoned you. It hasn't. You need to ground yourself, but at the same time, you just mustn't allow yourself to be negative. And I think perhaps by grounding yourself, you're grounding that negativity. It's like with electricity; it runs through you, and that allows you to move on and really recognize that this can be quite a special time for you, provided you don't get sidetracked by negative vibes. Gemini. Mercury is an important planet if you're a Gemini. I'm speaking as a Gemini. I mean, I've just talked about Taurus. I've got Taurus rising, and I've got my sun in Gemini. So that would mean that from my perspective, from a solar perspective, my ruler would be Mercury. From a rising perspective, my ruler is Venus. And today we've got Venus semisquare Saturn, which is my ascendant ruler, and we've got Mercury semisquare Saturn, which is my sun ruler. That seems a bit grim. Oh, it needn't be grim. But the point is, I'm not talking to myself. I'm talking to you. You're a Gemini, and Mercury is semisquare Saturn, and that aspect needs to be registered, but you don't want to obsess about it. And when you're talking about astrology and Mercury, you're thinking about the way people think, the way people think about themselves, the way they process information. And with Mercury semisquare Saturn, we might be talking perhaps about a negative cognitive set. Have I got that right? So negative cognitive set is essentially about maybe seeing things in the worst possible light. You interpret things in a negative way, and if you interpret things in a negative way, then you come to the view that there's nothing you can do. I think it's a very long time since I did a degree in psychology, but I think there was some, wasn't there some experiment with dogs where was it Seligman, and so dogs were an awful experiment, but were given electric shocks, and there was nothing they could do to avoid the electric shocks, so they didn't try to avoid them. They could avoid them, but they got so used to the constant pain of the electric shocks that when they were actually free, when the harness was taken off, they just sat there. And so that is not a nice experiment, but it does illustrate the point about negative cognitive sets. And with Mercury semisquare Saturn, there could be an assumption that things will go wrong. That if things are going to go wrong, well, what can you do? You can't avoid it. And that's not a good place for Geminis. Even if you are making some effort to avoid negative results, there just could be a feeling of just what is the point? And that can be something that all Geminis can do. That it's just something that happens in the life of the average Gemini. And Mercury semisquare Saturn, it does intensify it, but it's almost certainly, I mean, I don't say 100%, say 75%. It's likely to be on a psychological level rather than a genuine frustration. I mean, a genuine event which stops you doing whatever it is you want to do. Psychologically, you tell yourself this is a bad situation. You are just interpreting neutral inputs in the worst possible way. I mean, that's what it is. And so I'm talking here about a tendency, just a possibility. And I absolutely do not want to create self-fulfilling prophecies. I mean, you could say it is a self-fulfilling prophecy, and I have to be sort of careful from a sort of almost from an ethical perspective. So what I don't want to do, Gemini, is put it into your head that you are going to feel negative about yourself and the world. I don't want to do that. And so, Gemini, you need the maturity to recognize that. And you also need to recognize that what you think and what you feel is not the same as external reality. So if you are, over the course of the day, finding that you're negative about something, it's just your own perception. It may be because something didn't work in the past. Like Seligman's dogs. If in the past they had an electric shock and they couldn't escape from it, and it had happened several times, but we're just going to assume, well, it's going to be like that always. But it needn't be like that always. Every event is independent, and I think that is really that's something that's very important to remember: the independence of events. And I think a lot of people make mistakes because they regard events as being connected, that they're somehow linked. If something didn't work last time, it's not going to work this time because there's a relationship. No, treat every event as totally independent, and it's up to you to make the most of it. And I think that with that in mind, I think that you can transform things. And Mercury semisquare Saturn, it's not all bad. There is a positive way of looking at Mercury semisquare Saturn. So we kind of got to try and use a sort of a positive cognitive set with this Mercury semisquare Saturn. Saturn is a planet which can be about discipline, hard work, and structure. Maybe, Gemini, you've got ideas which in themselves are great, wonderful ideas, but they're just ideas. Mercury's in Aquarius. There is no planets in Earth signs except for Uranus. So ideas they float around, they have their moment and they disappear, and nothing gets done. And so what is the antidote to that? Well, you could say the antidote to that is Saturn semisquare Saturn semisquare Mercury is telling you, Gemini, well, you've got to get it together. What are you going to do? And maybe if there's any negativity, it's a negativity of saying, well, you've got to actually sit down and make it happen. And that's kind of not what you want to do. You would just rather float around. And of course, at this stage, I'm probably talking to myself. I mean, there are things I need to do. There are things I need to get together. I mean, I've had some great ideas, actually. I'm not going to talk about my great ideas. I've had lots of great ideas, over the last couple of weeks. I feel really good about them. But I know on past performance that the chances of these ideas actually coming to fruition are pretty much zero, because that is an example of a negative cognitive set, and you've got to break out of that negative cognitive set. And whatever happened in the past, that says nothing about the future, and it's your future. Especially now that Mercury's in Gemini, Mercury's starting to make a conjunction to Venus. Support is out there. You're able to come over as being a pleasant person. Okay, not necessarily an emotionally pleasant person. I mean, it's not really an emotional day for anyone. but you come over as being interesting, maybe not quite exciting, but you've certainly got important things to say. And also, I think you can get quite a high level of support. And with Mercury conjunct Venus, there's no reason that, up to a point that, relationships in general, should work pretty well for you. So to conclude, Gemini, you have a choice. It is possible that you do get wrapped up in your negativity today. But I think, as I've tried to argue, it is completely unnecessary. Cancer. We have the moon moving through Gemini all day long, and it's making a load of aspects, making a load of trine aspects to all of those Aquarius planets. It makes trine to Pluto, starts the day trine to Pluto, then it makes trine to Mars, trine to Sun, trine to Mercury, trine to Venus. A load of trines, load of action, load of connections there. And so Cancer, the question is, how actually are you going to experience that? And a lot of what's going on may be taking place at a fairly internal level. It's not necessarily about action, things happening in the sort of outside world, things happening in a way that everyone notices. It's not a time to be getting noticed. You would rather, Cancer, do things in your own way, at your own pace, and it's quite possible that you really don't want to be disturbed too much. I mean, there's a lot to think about. There's a lot to feel as well. I mean, not now is not really a time for sort of expressing those feelings. You're not in the mood, and probably other people are not in the mood either. And so, Cancer, really try to think about what is important to you, what your own priorities are. And it's very likely that your best work is going to be done when you're alone, and you're just going to feel good about it. And if you have to worry about other people, well, that's kind of not entirely what you want. And we have got the moon making a trine to the sun. I mean, moon trine sun is always a good aspect, and moon is your ruler, trine sun. Yes, you are feeling good about yourself, but very much on your own terms. I don't think that you want to do things other people's way, or try too hard to express what you're feeling. Not at all, no. So whether or not it's a good day kind of depends on you. I mean, if you make a special effort to get on with people, to be with people, to talk to people, you're not going to feel great. And one aspect we have today is Venus semisquare Saturn. We've also got Mercury semisquare Saturn, and with those two aspects, other people could be a problem. Even people who under normal circumstances are fine, people you trust, there's something just holding them back. They say things, but it doesn't necessarily make sense, and there's just a general uneasiness here, and uneasiness in terms of both mental and emotional communication. But again, that is a social issue, and Cancer, if you just concentrate on yourself and what's important to you, it's probably a great time to be engaged in things which are quite secretive, where you don't want anyone to know what you're doing. You're working behind the scenes in the shadows. I think that you can be very effective, and you might also want to do secret research. You want to give yourself an advantage. And perhaps there may be a situation where you need to defend yourself, and perhaps it's a brewing conflict. It could be, but you want to give yourself the advantage. And, remember, of all the 12 signs, the one sign you never want to pick a fight with is Cancer. Never, never. I mean, Cancer, in many respects, and I don't know why, is the strongest of the 12 signs. And once you get involved in some kind of conflict with them, it's very difficult to win over. And perhaps you're now able to start to tune into this intrinsic strength, and perhaps this strength, Cancer, is about what you are doing and what you are preparing. You are preparing your ground, or at least you can prepare your ground. So if you are involved in a difficult situation, where there are winners and losers, then I think today you can take really important steps towards shoring up your position and giving yourself the best chance of, in the end, being victorious. Leo. The sun is, of course, still in Aquarius, and being in Aquarius, it's difficult to avoid other people. Other people, I think, do matter. You have to consider, what they're doing, what they're up to, and I think that you're going to be helped by the moon. The moon is in Gemini. It's making trine aspects to all of those Aquarius planets. So I think, Leo, that this gives you, great, social facility. I think that things do move pretty well, and if you make some effort, to get on with people, I do think that your efforts will be reciprocated. And so, as far as is possible, try to be at the center of things. But it's not about necessarily you. It's not like you should be demanding attention. It's instead about being just present and being able to interact with other people. And that's probably enough. And if the question is, who gains? You can gain through other people's company without necessarily making much of an effort. Though it is true that if you so wish, you can really have a powerful impact. If there's something that really is bothering you, Leo, then I don't think that you're going to have any difficulty expressing it. Especially that now we've got the moon in Gemini making a trine to the sun in Aquarius, and the sun is pretty close to the Mars, it's pretty close to Mercury, so all of that does indicate that you can be open and honest, not emotional. As I'm pretty much telling everyone, it is not a day to be emotional. So if you are talking about something, save the passion and intensity for later. I don't think that that's what people are particularly interested in. I don't think it's what you're interested in either. So I think it's a day when by and large you can enjoy yourself. You can enjoy other people's company, and you can certainly tune into your own power, but not in a super aggressive way, because I think you've got to give people a chance to explain themselves, and perhaps also to reveal themselves. There may be, it's a situation where there are some people you don't really know whether to trust them. You don't know, because you haven't seen enough, and maybe right now you can really get to understand certain people and understand what makes them tick. And once you know what makes them tick, you'll perhaps be in a position to make a decision about whether or not they can be trusted, whether or not you want them to be part of your life. Virgo. I don't want to bother Virgos. I don't want to upset Virgo's peace of mind. There's nothing for Virgo to be worried about. Everything can proceed on time, to schedule. It'll be okay. There needn't be too many distractions. But I think if there is a problem today, Virgo, it might be your own perceptions and your own interpretations. So it might be a situation where things, things really are good. Things are looking up. You're able to sort yourself out. You benefit from the fact that Mercury is starting to move towards a conjunction of Venus. With Venus, Venus is not just a planet of relationships. It's just a general planet of good luck. So Mercury moving towards a conjunction of Venus, things should be looking good for you. But then we have to ask, what might spoil it? And what might spoil it is the fact that Mercury is making a semisquare to Saturn, and it's also starting to make a semisquare to Neptune. And so with those aspects, Virgo, there just may be things that really are just worrying you. You're bothered by them. You feel that things could go wrong. And if you feel that things could go wrong, that might well have an impact on your behavior. You might not want to take risks. You might not want to take any risks. You might take the view that it's best to hold back and even, not do anything. And part of the issue might be that you are over analyzing the situation. You're looking at things in huge detail, and it's driving you crazy. It could drive you crazy, and you can come up with all sorts of reasons why things could go wrong, and therefore you might come to the conclusion that it's best to do nothing. And I would very much argue against that. So watch your mind, watch your psychology, watch your fears and your worries. And so if you do become worried about something, if you feel that something is impossible, if you suddenly get a feeling that this isn't going to work, it can happen. You just feel this sort of emptiness. There's no point. If you get those kind of feelings, you should brush them off and just proceed to plan, and do that, and you'll be fine. In fact, you'll be more than fine. And so I want this reading of a Virgo to be encouraging, and it should be encouraging. And I certainly don't want to create self-fulfilling prophecies. The moon is in Gemini. The moon is making loads of wonderful trines. It's making trines to all the Aquarius planets, and including in those trines, it's making a trine to Mercury, and it's making a trine to Venus. So with the moon trine Mercury and Venus, I have complete faith in your ability to really get things together. And if there is anything you want or you need, I think that there isn't really an excellent chance you can get it. And this is especially the case if you're working, if you have a job, or if you're trying to work on achieving particular ambitions. Now is the time when you can really get it together. And you have to be aware of the importance of detail. That's true, but you don't want the details to completely overwhelm you. You might just think there are so many things to sort out that you can't get anything together. Of course, that would be not true. And maybe you have to decide, what is important and what you can do right now. If one thing is impossible or seems impossible, well, then there's another thing you can do. So, by being, constructive and being patient and, taking things, one step at a time, that is very much the way forward. And, with this Mercury making a semisquare to Saturn, one thing that might be a good idea is, don't listen to other people too much if you don't want to. I mean, some people give you great advice, they're very supportive. Other people may not be helpful. And if someone is not being helpful, is trying to discourage you, you need to identify the situation. And so, in general, maybe 75, 80% of the time, if someone is discouraging you, is not being positive, then they should probably be ignored. Probably. I'm not saying absolutely 100%. Sometimes you need advice. Sometimes you need quite harsh advice. Sometimes. But I just think that today, probably you should be focusing on the positive. And if anyone's being overly negative, I think maybe they should be ignored. Libra. It's quite a good day. I mean, it can be quite a good day, provided that you handle things correctly. So, what we have at the moment, Libra, is we have got, as usual, a load of planets in Aquarius. Got 5 planets in Aquarius in an air sign, and we have got the moon in Gemini. And the moon in Gemini is making fortunate trine aspects to all of those Aquarius planets. And of course, you're a Libra, so the missing air sign, that's Libra. So if you throw Libra in, you've kind of got sort of grand trine. You've got all of that sort of grand trine energy, and so it does mean, Libra, that for you things can move very quickly, and you can feel sort of quite inspired, and you can have sort of great ideas about what is possible, what the world can offer. And so there can just be a natural, spontaneous enthusiasm. And if you think something is possible, well, yeah, it can be possible. And it's not just that the moon is making a trine to the Aquarius planets. Mercury is starting to make a conjunction to Venus. Mercury is the planet of communication, and it really does allow you to express who you are, and also to think about who you are, and to I think be very positive about it all. And I think you need to be positive, and you need to be open-minded as well. Think about everything that can happen if everything were to go right. Now, there is one issue though, and the issue is this: is that one of the main aspects of the day is a semisquare between Venus and Saturn. And Venus is, having made the semisquare to Saturn, it starts moving towards a semisquare of Neptune. So Venus is kind of influenced by by the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, that Saturn-Neptune conjunction, which is getting closer and closer. And this could, not will, but could be undermining. You might start to worry. You might start to think about this possibility and that possibility. There may be a certain sense of social worry. If some Librans do worry about the people around them and whether they're behaving correctly. And with this social worry, with that kind of burden, you might be asking yourself, well, is it really worth it? Do you really want to take the risk? And this also applies to your ideas about yourself. You may be thinking, you're not good enough, that you can't do it. It's going to go wrong. And what you've got here is, Venus, semisquare Saturn and Neptune. It's undermining you, but I think in most cases it's working on a psychological level. It's not about anything real in most cases. I must emphasize that. I mean, it could be that there is an absolute physical block, which does need to be addressed. That is a possibility, but I think it's most likely to be psychological. Your own worries. Perhaps you feel that the past is going to repeat itself. If something's gone wrong in the past, it's going to go wrong in the present and the future as well. But you kind of have got to snap out of that. So if you find yourself suddenly feeling negative, I think you've just got to take it in your stride, not allow things to get you down. You've got to be positive, and I hate telling people to just be positive for the sake of it, but I'm telling you to be positive because I can see the negatives, and I'm just fairly sure that those negatives are going to be working on a psychological level. Just something, just getting you down. You notice something, and nothing is perfect. So everything, 9 things out of 10 may be perfect, but there's just that one thing, and you come up with a good reason why that one thing is going to break the deal, and it's not going to break the deal. Maybe it can be addressed, and that leads us to perhaps a positive side of Venus semisquare Saturn. It needn't be negative, and that Saturn can represent what you should be doing. So if something is not perfect, then take that Venus semisquare Saturn and use it. And you use that Venus semisquare Saturn by taking a problem and resolving it. That's especially the case if this Venus semisquare Saturn represents not just a psychological problem, but a real problem, something that actually has to be addressed, something you haven't sorted out. And as I've just said, it's not a showstopper. It absolutely isn't, but you just need to work with it. And if you can work with it, then you'll be fine. And so perhaps what you need to do, Libra, is take the astrological symbolism and use it correctly. Yeah, you can look at Venus semisquare Saturn, Venus semisquare Neptune in a negative way, but you can look at the Venus semisquare Saturn positively. It's about what you can do, what you can construct, and how you can resolve just about any issue and find the fulfillment and success that you deserve. Scorpio. It's another day when there are a load of planets in Aquarius. Those planets in Aquarius, they don't go away, and it is a potentially heavy burden having that sort of intense build-up in such an important part of your chart. And there is a temptation to think that there is nothing you can do about it, and it's best to just stay where you are. Especially now, when at times it may feel that there isn't a great deal of support. And when you look at the surrounding, social milieu in which you may be in, it just doesn't seem great. I think that you're quite good at the moment at seeing other people's limitations. They promise a lot, but can they deliver? As far as you're concerned, probably not. And you might well be right. But you are a Scorpio, and things should be done your way. And you, of all people, know that you can't be dependent on another person. I mean, that's absolutely not what you want. And these planets in Aquarius, well, we still have that Mars conjunct Pluto I was talking about, and that Mars conjunct Pluto, yeah, sure, it can be quite an intense energy, and it can sort of encourage you towards sort of introversion and thinking that you have to just focus on things yourself, and you don't want anyone to get in your way. And so it can almost be quite self-defeating if you're too focused on yourself, because if you're too focused on yourself, well, nothing gets done. But now the moon is making a trine to Mars and Pluto. That moon trine to the Mars and Pluto can be particularly strong if you're in Australia or New Zealand, but I think that even if you're in the Americas, you should be able to pick up on it, particularly at the beginning of the day. And so with that moon, that gives you the possibility of transforming yourself. You take something that is powerful, and you find a kind of a new way of dealing with it, looking at it. And part of it is maybe going deeply within yourself and finding some kind of inner transformation. And I think that sort of inner transformation can happen, and it's a kind of transformation that really doesn't need anyone's help. And so yeah, it's important certainly to be self-sufficient. I don't think that other people are necessarily going to be able to deliver today, but I don't think that matters. It really doesn't. I think that you absolutely have everything you need, and right at the end of the day, it kind of depends where you are, but the moon does make a trine to Venus, and it makes a trine to Mercury. And so with that moon trine Venus, I think that in the end you can find the right kind of accommodation with the right kind of person or the right kind of people. So just because things look difficult on a social level over the course of the day doesn't necessarily mean it's going to stay that way. And perhaps right at the end you'll start to make progress, and you'll start to be able to interact, especially if you're in the Americas. I think if you're in the Americas, then I think that things are perhaps going to be easier than if you're in other parts of the world. But just don't get sort of too sidetracked by yourself and your own private concerns, because I think that that would be a shame. And it is a day when everyone can achieve a great deal, and I certainly think that includes you. And don't forget the sheer willpower of that conjunction between Mars and Pluto. You certainly can make things happen, and you can make things happen your way. Sagittarius. It's a time, Sagittarius, that kind of just goes on, doesn't it? It does go on. And you're looking for a change. You're looking for breaks. You almost want to be able to see something, and sometimes it's difficult to see. There's perhaps a lot in your way, and it maybe isn't helped by the fact that your general inclination is to do things on your own. And I think this has been the case for a few days. So to an extent, Sagittarius, I have been repeating myself. So there are things, Sagittarius, that are important to you. You don't necessarily want to share them, and so perhaps this is part of something wider. Remember, Jupiter is your ruler. Jupiter's in Cancer. Cancer, is quite a private sign, and it is exalted, but it is private. It does like to do things its own way. It doesn't like to be bothered. And now that particularly now that it's retrograde, and I know Jupiter stays retrograde for a long time, but while it's retrograde, you are looking at things, in a slightly different way, and part of you doesn't really want to be bothered, but there is a different way of looking at things. I mean, don't forget that now the moon is in Gemini, and so the moon in Gemini kind of contradicts your desire for solitude. I mean, you see the advantages of solitude, but the moon in Gemini is telling you that, well, there is perhaps something else out there. There are people out there. These people may well do things that run in your best interest. Especially the moon is making some great trines. It's making a trine to all of those Aquarius planets. It's got 5 planets in Aquarius. Moon making trines to all of them, and that does mean, Sagittarius, that if you make the effort to communicate, to whether it's text message, emails, through the spoken word, the phone, whatever, however you try to communicate, you may be pleasantly surprised by the results. I mean, you may think, Sagittarius, that there is no point, but I really do think that there is a point. And once you start talking, once you start reaching out, as they say, then I think that you will get a reaction, and I think that in most cases the reaction is going to be fortunate. So I think it's important, Sagittarius, that you don't give up on the social world. In spite of the fact that, you have your own private feelings, there is a lot you want to keep to yourself, but you don't have to reveal everything. Today is a day which is not especially emotional. I don't think emotions are going to work very well, but there's a lot of planets in air signs. We've got 5 planets in Aquarius, we've got moon in Gemini, so that's 6 planets in air signs, and so the air signs are about things perhaps working on the surface, people talking about their ideas, perhaps even the gossip, whatever it is, and it's not going to get too deep. You're not going to be asked to justify yourself, and so you can just go along with this. And it might seem a bit trivial, but it's harmless, and there might be a revelation along the way, and you might find that on a social level, things aren't quite as bad as they seem. So perhaps, Sagittarius, it's important to give other people a chance. Capricorn, are you the problem or are you the solution? And that might be an important question today. And it's all about Saturn. You know, Saturn is your ruler, and Saturn is making a semisquare to, well, both Venus and Mercury. So in terms of how I've been talking about this aspect so far, I've been, talking about, poor Mercury, poor Venus having this sort of nasty semisquare from Saturn. But of course, when I'm talking to you, Capricorn, Saturn is you. Saturn is your ruler. So it's absolutely possible, Capricorn, that you're the one who can come up with reasons why things shouldn't happen. I think you're going to be quite good at making people feel self-conscious. You can be critical if need be. And, there are certain issues you regard as being important. I mean, for example, money. And if someone is doing something wrong or isn't properly thinking things through, you'll be quick to bring them down to earth. People need to be brought down to earth to an extent, but you don't want to take things too far. And so in your interactions with other people, particularly if you have any position of authority where people are looking to you for advice or looking to you for permission, then be very careful. Don't be heavy-handed. That doesn't mean to say you can't be realistic. I mean, you must be realistic. And if something is impossible, it's impossible. If someone is about to make a mistake, you have to tell them. But you don't want to go things too far. You don't, if you like, want to exceed your authority. So that's one way in which you might want to think about today. There might also be a challenge here. You had understood things in one way. You wanted things to unfold in a particular manner, and you were very clear about this. But then, something happens which you weren't expecting. It just might be events. It might be other people. Other people can do strange, unusual things. They can spring surprises, and they might make suggestions that you're just not comfortable with. Just maybe emotionally not comfortable with, and that's maybe why you are being negative. So in your social interactions, it's important that you ask yourself why you are doing what you are doing. Why are you saying what you're saying? And if you are discouraging someone or being negative, do think about your motivations. Are your motivations honest and open? You can see a problem, a genuine problem, or are you just responding to the new? Do you want the new? Maybe you don't at some level. And if something is troubling, you might be quick to just pour cold water over it. And that's kind of not what you want to do. And instead, you need to take perhaps a sort of a more sort of self-aware and disciplined approach. Work with things. That is important. Work with things. Just because something on the surface seems unrealistic doesn't mean it can't be done. It just might need some structuring and a bit of tweaking, and that applies not just to other people's ideas, but also to your own ideas. And it might be also that when it comes to money is always an issue for everyone all the time. Money cannot be avoided, but with the moon making some wonderful aspects to the Aquarius, wonderful trine aspects to all those planets in Aquarius, that indicates Capricorn that you can do some good work here. I mean, I think from a financial viewpoint, if you engage with financial matters and you try to understand them, and you can perhaps get the books to balance, or you might realize that with some effort you can create some spare money, and spare money can lead to sort of new possibilities. You're not perhaps quite as hemmed in as you thought you were. So that is an aspect to today. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of good that you can be mature and responsible and be a restraining influence if need be, but you can take it too far. And I think it's a day in your interaction with other people that you have to be, very aware of your sort of inner motivations. Aquarius, things are flowing. I mean, they have to be flowing, don't they? I mean, we've got all of these Aquarius planets. We've got the Moon in Gemini. The Moon is making a trine to all these to those Aquarius planets, and that indicates to me that it can be a day where there's a lot happening. There's a lot going on. I think that you're going to be able to really be yourself and be appreciated for being yourself. So, Aquarius, as I always say, is an independent-minded sign, and right now you can really tune into that independent-mindedness. Doing things in a way that you feel comfortable with, and really being able to really get involved, with your own creativity, and just in a way that is just completely natural. And as far as other people are concerned, I think that things are flowing. Okay, it's not a day that is especially emotional. It's not about emotional oneness and togetherness, but you can still be with other people, enjoy their company, but in a light way. You don't want to get involved in anything serious as far as relationships are concerned. It is all about having fun, enjoying someone's presence, and also sort of living for the present. So that might be a way in which things can work. But is it always going to work like that? I mean, one problem we do have today is that Saturn is making semisquares to Mercury and Venus, and semisquares are an aspect that I regard as being quite important, and later in the video I'll be talking about these semisquares in some detail. The fact that Saturn is semisquare Mercury and semisquare Venus, but there's just a danger that you can sort of bring things down. Yeah, it's true that you can be great company, life and soul of the party, but you can also be a dead weight if you want to be. Aquarius is a fixed sign. You can be very focused on things that you regard as being important. You can be quite intolerant. You can be, I'm not saying you are, but you can be intolerant of differences, intolerant of people with different views. Aquarius can say, well, having considered all views in my reasonable Aquarian way, I know that I'm right. And you can take that too far. So do consider how you are impacting other people and what impact you're having on their self-expression, because in certain situations you might not be very constructive. You might sort of cut people off because maybe you just think that you know best. But if you cut if you cut someone else off, you'll be cutting yourself off, because I think that today, with Mercury conjunct Venus, Mercury's not exactly conjunct Venus today. I think it's sort of tomorrow or the day after. You can be very free flowing in what you say, but and in terms of also how you receive feedback, but just something in you might decide you want to close things down for whatever reason. Maybe with Saturn moving towards a conjunction to Neptune, slowly moving towards a conjunction to Neptune, you're afraid of change. Or you're afraid of being challenged. I mean, that is certainly possible. You are an Aquarius, and you have a fixed sign, and you have a way you'd like things to be. And if things aren't that way, well, you might cause trouble. But I think you just need to be aware of all of this. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I think that you just have to really consider how you're interacting with other people and ask yourself, are you being a force for good, or are you being a force for, I won't say a force for bad, but are you perhaps being not as helpful as you should be? Pisces. Well, Pisces, you may feel that it's not necessarily, the greatest day. I mean, for many people, it's a good day. It's a powerful day. It's a day when they can structure themselves, but they can also be quite positive and quite creative, provided they can get round those squares involving Mercury. Sorry, not squares, semisquares involving Mercury and Saturn and Mercury and Neptune. But from your perspective, Pisces, I don't think that there's a whole load of things that you feel that you want to do. I mean, there may be things you regard as being important, but I think the idea of getting attention, it doesn't really appeal to you. And I think by and large, Pisces, you'd prefer to stick to what you know and trust, and other people. No, I think that at some level, Pisces, you probably want to distance yourself from certain other people. As far as you're concerned, they just might not be helpful. Now, I think you should just treat this as a passing phase. It's not a phase that is really a problem. And perhaps you consider that now's a time when you've got your own work to do, things that you enjoy, and it just might be a time to soak up the vibes in your own way. Because if you were to have a day that was very sociable, or at least if you tried to be very sociable, you might be disappointed, and you might just feel that the atmosphere is just wrong. It just doesn't fit. People are going in different ways, and also, of course, there's a lot of air at the moment. A lot of planets in air signs. 5 planets in Aquarius, 1 moon in Gemini. A lot of planets in air, and all things being equal, it might all seem a bit trivial, and people are sort of rushing around, doing one thing, talking about one thing, talking about something else, and you're just asking yourself, well, what is the point? Where is it all going? And as far as you're concerned, it might be going, absolutely nowhere. And if that's the way you feel, then just go with it. And I think it's probably the case that when you are on your own, you're going to be on best form. Things are going to move, and perhaps you can work with some of your ideas and also some of your feelings. I mean, if you have strong feelings about something, maybe these feelings need to be worked through on your own. Because if you were to try to talk about your feelings out there with other people in a social environment, it's just not going to feel good at all. So probably, Pisces, stick to your own instincts. Listen to your feelings, and if something doesn't seem right, then probably that's the way it is. And also, Mercury is making a semisquare to Saturn. I mean, Venus is making a semisquare to Saturn as well. So Saturn's influence, well, Saturn is in your sign. So Saturn may say something about you and how you are behaving, and perhaps rather unusually, Pisces, you have the ability to shut people up. I mean, you can have a quite definite influence on people. It might be a negative influence, and people just don't know what to say. And perhaps the reason they don't know what to say is because of the power of your personality. I mean, you're not in a weak position. I must emphasize that. But you're just not in the mood for really going out of your way, especially on a social level. And that's it. Those are my forecasts for the 12 signs. And now it's time to look at things from the viewpoint of the I Ching. So I asked the question, what is Wednesday going to be like for those watching the I Ching section of this video? And the first hexagram I got was hexagram number 11, which is peace. It's a very harmonious hexagram, and it kind of fits with the fact that we've got the moon trine the sun, and we've got the moon in Gemini at the moment, trine the sun in Aquarius. So things are kind of coming together. There is just a sense of flow here. And so it's going to be that kind of day. I think it's a day when things can move, not necessarily in an especially dramatic way, but it also, links not just with the moon trine the sun. The fact that the moon in Gemini is making trines to basically all of the 5 Aquarius planets. And so, yeah, that certainly gives us the idea of flow, that one thing is running into another, and it's all very straightforward, very easy. And, we've got the 4th line from the bottom moving. And again, that's easy. The I Ching talks about fluttering, things fluttering down with that 4th line. And fluttering down means like no resistance. We don't necessarily have boundaries. There's not a sense of boundaries between, people of different statuses. Everything is spontaneous. We can get on with just about everyone. And so, this I Ching is not talking about, I know I've gone on about the Venus semisquare Saturn, Mercury semisquare Saturn, but this I Ching is saying there isn't such an issue there. That, we can communicate with everyone, and everything just moves. And there can be also a sense of unity, that we can be connected with other people, and that we can see the common ground there. And I think that is going to be, a really good side, of today. Now, 4th line moving, that does mean that we move to a 2nd hexagram, and the hexagram we move to is hexagram number 34, which is the power of the great. And so after all of this, we do get a sense of our own power, and we realize that there is actually a great deal that we can do. But just because we feel that power doesn't mean to say that we go and use that power straight away, and absolutely not, because that feeling of power is just the beginning. We know what we can do, but we don't just do the first thing that comes to mind. We have to find a way of using that power, and it does seem that the opportunity is there. It's right in front of us. So if you have decided that you want to use your power in a particular way, go ahead, but just don't do it right now necessarily. It is going to take time. You've identified, who you are and what you can do, and now you need to then find a sort of a more practical way of actually exercising this power, and perhaps that is the work. But overall, I think that this hexagram suggests it's going to be a pretty good day when things really are going to move for you, and you will have a sense of what you can do. So this completely contradicts, you could say, those aspects, Saturn semisquare Venus, particularly Saturn semisquare Mercury. There might be, which I was suggesting, there might be some despondency with that Saturn semisquare Mercury, but I don't think so. I mean, certainly not from an I Ching perspective. It's talking about confidence and just knowing that things are going to get better, even better than they are now, perhaps. And now I want to switch to those 2 aspects that I was referring to, Saturn's aspects to Mercury and Venus. So let's look at the chart. So if we look at the chart for today, this section, by the way, is not going to last very long. I don't think I necessarily have a huge amount to say on the subject. So we're dealing with a 45 degree aspect. So there is Saturn at 28 something Pisces, and it's semisquare those Mercury and Venus here. So semisquare is an important aspect, particularly if it's close. I mean, when I say close, certainly a degree. I wouldn't go 2 degrees. Just it's a powerful aspect with a tight orb. And 1 degree is ideal, or less. and the closer that aspect becomes, the more intense it is. And so, one way of looking at that aspect is you can break it down. You could say Saturn semisquare Mercury means negative thoughts. You could go further and you could say depression. I don't want to say that in a clinical way, but not because I'm not qualified, and I certainly can't generalize about depression, but there just might be things that we are completely negative about with Saturn semisquare Mercury. Mercury in Aquarius, all those great ideas, the future, and Saturn is saying, it's not going to work. Get yourself together, get real. Or Saturn semisquare Venus, that can be emotionally quite difficult because Venus is a planet of relationships. It's also about how we relate to ourselves, and it's a softer influence perhaps than Mercury. And so Saturn semisquare Venus, we might feel alone. We might feel that we've got no support. We might feel that some of our fantasies and dreams are all coming to nothing. And then when you put Mercury and Venus together, you can say, well, Mercury and Venus is a very creative combination, as I keep saying, and particularly now that Mercury is moving towards a conjunction of Venus. There's all the stuff that we can do. And then Saturn semisquare Mercury Venus is Saturn, actually on the Mercury Venus midpoint, saying, it's just not going to work. Just forget it. So there is an issue here, and so we also have to think that Saturn. That's Saturn semisquare the Mercury Venus midpoint, because so Mercury Venus, you could say, is about creativity. And so if Saturn is semisquare Mercury Venus, we might have doubts about our creative abilities, at least in a negative sense. But there might be a positive side to it as well, because a lot of us are very talented. We're all very talented at some level, of course, and we've got things that we do really well in theory. But what about the practice? In most cases, just nothing happens. It's all in our heads. And you could then say that Saturn semisquare Mercury Venus is asking us to get ourselves together. It's not enough just to have an idea. Mercury Venus in Saturn, Mercury Venus in Aquarius. Yeah, so what? But Saturn is saying, what are you going to do? And with Saturn in Pisces, if you think about Saturn in Pisces, I think that from a tarot perspective, if you look at the Crowley tarot pack, Saturn in Pisces is a miserable card. It's just pools of water, dank pools of mud, and Crowley, I'm pretty sure he calls that card indolence. But it's perhaps that emotional indolence. That emotional indolence it's not a happy indolence. It's just like mud. We're worrying about things. We're concerned about things, and this is how Saturn in Pisces can work. And as far as our creativity is concerned, it just gets destroyed by our own negativity. There's so many things we can do. It's all there, but we're not there. We know we're missing a chance, but we're just somewhere else. We're looking at our phone, we're obsessing about something, and it just doesn't happen. And so that is the danger there. And so we've got to kind of transform that. It can't be about indolence. There is actually work to be done. And so perhaps we have to get through it. And so that might be a way in which Saturn semisquare the Mercury Venus midpoint can perhaps get us to get ourselves together, but it also shows, what can go wrong, what could go wrong. And so it might be a good idea just to illustrate the point, to look at it from a perspective of a 90-degree dial. And the 90-degree dial shows conjunctions as conjunctions, but it also shows semisquares and sesquiquadrates as oppositions. So if we look at the 90-degree dial, and we set the thing up on the 90-degree dial, there is there's our Mercury Venus conjunction right there. Other way. So you can see that there's the Mercury-Venus conjunction, and it is opposition Saturn, and it's in fact it's on the Saturn-Neptune midpoint. It's on the Saturn-Aries midpoint. So you can see the despondency there. It's so close but so far, and so I think that's how we might experience it. But so if you do feel down with this aspect, just remember that there is a way through. It requires some effort. It requires some honesty. But that first step is perhaps the step that needs to be taken. And so I think that it is troubling. And don't forget that the Saturn Neptune together. So because you've got two sets of planets coming together. You've got the Saturn Neptune conjunction on one side, and you've got the Mercury Venus conjunction on another side, and they are smashing into each other, as we can see here. And so Saturn Neptune, it's all about the fear. I can't do this. This is dreadful. If I were to take the initiative, this could go wrong. But we have to get through it, and hopefully that Saturn can be about discipline, and that Neptune gives us an awareness, hopefully, of what's happening out there. Neptune has just gone into Aries. Things have changed. Neptune in Aries is about leadership. It's about that's what people appreciate. People just don't want some sort of chaotic pool of mud anymore. They want leadership with Neptune in Aries, and perhaps if we can somehow show leadership, even if deep down we just have complete reservations, we think we're not good enough, somehow we've got to get through that. So I think that it's a tough series of aspects, but perhaps by being aware of how it's affecting all of us, we can maybe give ourselves a competitive advantage, and we can cut through the negativity and find a way in which we can engage in meaningful action. Now, as far as transits are concerned, how should we see this? So the way one should possibly see transits, the way I see transits is that you have a heavy planet like Saturn, and Saturn will inevitably transit the various planets in your chart. But when Saturn is transiting something in your chart, and then you get Mercury and Venus coming along, I would have said that those Mercury and Venus are acting as triggers. So if, for example, you have your Saturn at, say, 28 degrees, if you have let's say you've got your moon at 28 degrees Pisces, and Saturn is on your moon. Now, clearly, this is a period of a few days or maybe longer where you might not feel great about yourself. It depends on your horoscope, but how it's going to manifest. And then Mercury and Venus. If Mercury and Venus simultaneously aspect your moon while the Saturn is on your moon, Mercury and Venus can, at least in theory, be kind of like triggers. So what I'm going to do to finish is just look at a few people. Some of them I know. Well, I don't know much about most of them, but just a few people, and just who seem to be having Saturn issues at the moment, and just asking, just thinking about how it might work. It's very quick. So one person who is often in the news is Kim Kardashian. Again, Kim Kardashian, reality TV star. I don't know anything about her, not really, but I know she's always in the news, and clearly a woman who is extremely successful, and she has her moon at 28 degrees Pisces on her IC. So that moon, and she's also got moon opposition Jupiter in Virgo. Jupiter in Virgo, that's a great Jupiter, isn't it? In some respects, it's in its detriment, but someone who is with Jupiter in Virgo can be, very focused on just success, on the minutiae of success. it may be lacking a wider vision. I mean, that is a problem with Jupiter in Virgo, but if she's interested in money and success, it might seem a bit a bit mundane, somewhat superficial. It doesn't matter if you want to be successful. And the Moon is opposition Jupiter, so if you want to be a reality TV star, well, having Moon opposition Jupiter, the drama of Moon opposition Jupiter, I mean, that's what gets people to watch them, isn't it? I mean, I don't really watch reality TV. I do not watch reality TV, but I assume that is what it's about. And the drama, Moon in Pisces, you can see how it's really working for her. Moon in Pisces is the family. And go on and on about the Kardashians and all of this kind of thing. The family, making the family part of her success, and so it is a very powerful chart. And yeah, she's got Saturn in Libra. It's a great place. Saturn in Libra in the 10th house. Saturn exalted, a male planet above the horizon in a daylight chart. It is a strong horoscope, and now she has got Saturn on her Moon. Now, I have no idea what she's going through. Absolutely not. I know she was married to Kanye West, but they split up ages ago. I don't know. I don't know about that. But if she's got Saturn on her Moon, and if you're into Vedic astrology, this is at the peak of Sati. Saturn is on your Moon. When Saturn is conjunct your Moon, or when in the same sign as the Moon, or Saturn is a sign before the Moon or a sign after the Moon from a Vedic perspective, that can be 7 years, which are a bit difficult. But the absolute peak of Sati for Kim Kardashian is right now. So she's got Saturn conjunct her Moon, and now she's just had Neptune conjunct her Moon, and now she's got Mercury and Venus making semisquares to her Moon. So you could say that those Mercury-Venus aspects are triggering that Moon and are making it particularly difficult for her. May say something about her home, probably the kind of thing that we'll never know about. I mean, I know that she's a reality TV star and that she must sort of reveal a huge amount about her life, but there are probably things that she doesn't reveal. That we never know about, and perhaps we will never know about it. But I was just using, Kim Kardashian as just an example as how we might use Saturn together with Mercury and Neptune of this transit. So Mercury with these transits from Mercury and Venus, you can see that might be impacting her. And a person who was in the news, quite recently was. Remember all the Bud Light thing? So the Bud Light campaign, which destroyed the Bud Light brand, and it was all about Dylan Mulvaney. So Dylan Mulvaney, I don't know what he was. He was now a she, sort of actor, dancer, whatever, who became trans and made a great success of it. Certainly got a lot of high profile firstly through his YouTube video, and then being temporarily the face of Bud Light. And we have a time birth for Dylan Mulvaney, and remember there was Dylan Mulvaney as a woman on the side of a can of Bud Light, and that completely destroyed the brand. And he has Venus on the midheaven, or she has Venus on the midheaven. I mean, that does kind of fit. If a man has a Venus on the midheaven, you can understand how he might aspire to be a woman. I mean, that's simple astrology. Now, I did see a piece of news about Dylan Mulvaney, or I listened to a piece of news about him. I mean, not that I was really focusing on it. It was, let's say, how did it go? He is going to be in a play which is about the 6 wives of Henry VIII, and it was going to be an all-female cast, and he was going to play Anne Boleyn. I think I got that right. Anyway, apparently that's what's going on in his, or however you want to see it, life. And Dylan Mulvaney has Saturn in Aries. Dylan Mulvaney's got Saturn return coming up, and Saturn conjunct the South Node. I wonder how this play is going to go. And additionally, Dylan Mulvaney has Saturn. Saturn is going to be opposition his Mars. Mercury and Venus sesquiquadrate his Mars. So this could be a difficult time for Dylan Mulvaney. Now, I can suggest from a collective point of view why this might be difficult. I have talked about Saturn in Pisces as being a time of variety, sympathy, compassion, excessive compassion. Certainly the whole transgender movement got sort of huge amounts of attention while Saturn was in Pisces. But now Saturn's moved into, now that Saturn and Neptune are moving into Aries, well, things have changed, particularly that Neptune's moving into Aries. The Geist is changing. I think that people who have sort of identified as being transgender, I mean, not all of them, but may suddenly feel that they're out of sync. They were in sync, now they're out of sync, and this could be devastating. I mean, I don't know about for him, her, but I mean, this is perhaps a sort of great tragedy going on here. That for example, people have had surgery and chemical treatment while Saturn was in Pisces, particularly while Neptune was in Pisces, and that was the thing to do. And then Saturn and Neptune going to Aries. It's out of sync now. The world has moved on. So that is a problem here, and I think for Dylan Mulvaney, the Saturn return and Saturn conjunct his Mars, I mean, maybe he's kind of a representative of the transgender movement, a very high-profile representative, whatever you think of him. And maybe those transits, particularly the fact he's got his Saturn return, that kind of says so much. And I'm not giving an opinion here, really. I'm just telling you, as it is. I mean, that's how I see it, at least. Well, okay, I am giving an opinion to a point, but I'm just trying to use the astrology to kind of indicate what might actually be going on here. And another person who I do look at occasionally is Sam Bankman-Fried. Remember FTX, that cryptocurrency company that went bust. They did go bust. It had been involved in a fraud. They'd been collecting money. They were supposed to be buying Bitcoin with it. They were instead using something else. People lost money. I think there has been restitution. And Sam Bankman-Fried was given a very, very long prison sentence in a federal prison. There was a campaign to get Trump to give him a pardon. Hard work, given that Sam Bankman-Fried was giving a lot of money. A lot of his ill-gotten gains were being given to the Democratic Party. He was one of the biggest donors in 2020. So probably not a good idea to be asking Trump for a pardon. And so he has, like Kim Kardashian, he has his moon at around 28 degrees Pisces. So he really is in the center of Sadhisati. He's got Saturn conjunct his moon. He's got Mercury and Venus semisquare his moon. So this may be a very difficult time for him, given he's in a federal prison. No chance of as far as I can see, no chance of a pardon from Trump. He'll probably get a pardon from the next Democratic president, but I mean, I think he's been sentenced to 25 years. I mean, whatever he did, I mean, I think that's just too long. I mean, this idea of locking someone up, throwing away the key, I don't really go for that. But I just would suggest that that this is a time where people need to really look after him, his family and the people around him in prison. He may be under more pressure than usual, given that he's right at the center of things, center of his Sadhisati, Saturn on his moon. It could be really tough for him, and you can see he's got Neptune at 2 degrees Aries, so Saturn and Neptune will be making a conjunction to Aries, so it must be difficult for him, and I hope he's looked after. I mean, I don't know. I think whatever he's done, probably Trump should give him a pardon by now, and I don't know, long prison sentences for white-collar crimes. I know people have lost a lot of money because of him, but I think, yeah, he could be impacted by this. India, Rahul Gandhi. Rahul Gandhi is part of the Nehru Gandhi dynasty. His grandmother was Indira Gandhi. I believe he's a leading light in the Congress party. So I know that the BJP have kind of ruling a roost at the moment in India, but that's not going to necessarily last forever. I think at the last elections, the BJP did lose some support. So Rahul Gandhi is an important figure in Indian politics, and he's relatively young. I mean, he's 50. He's not that young, but he's 50. What's he going to be? He's coming up to his 56th birthday. Okay, so it's not that young. A lot younger than me. But Rahul Gandhi has his sun at 2740 Gemini. So he's got Saturn square his sun, and Mercury and Venus have been sesquiquadrate his sun. I don't know what's going on in his life, but maybe he's got some issues. Maybe it's difficult for him to make political progress. But I'm not following Indian politics. So if you are in India, you're watching us from India, I'm just telling you that he's just to see what's going on in his life, because I think that this Saturn square his sun may have been having some impact. And then there is Michael Saylor. Michael Saylor of strategy fame. So Michael Saylor has his company Strategy, which basically borrows, as far as I can see, borrows money to buy more Bitcoin, and that's what their business is all about. And of course, the price of Bitcoin recently has not been great. 2025 was a pretty poor year for Bitcoin, and now it's everyone had high hopes about it, and there are always questions about whether Michael Saylor's company can survive. What would happen if the price of Bitcoin collapsed? And Michael Saylor has his Mars at 27 degrees Virgo. So he has got Saturn opposition his Mars. I mean, he's had Neptune opposition his Mars. Now he's got Saturn opposition his Mars. So that Saturn opposition Mars is probably past peak, but it may be that Mercury and Venus are kind of triggering that Mars. So it may be that he's working behind the scenes to sort of get through this period where the price of Bitcoin is pretty bad. I mean, it could be a lot worse. I mean, what is it, $88,000? It was $126,000. People were thinking it was going to go to hundreds of thousands last year. It hasn't. And so, someone borrowing money and using very complicated financial instruments to lever this money the toll might be playing on him. There might be quite a heavy toll there. And then we've got the Defense Secretary of the United States, Pete Hegseth. He certainly got a lot of attention with the kidnapping of Nicolas Maduro, and always a controversial figure is Pete Hegseth. And Pete Hegseth has his he, like Kim Kardashian and Sam Bankman-Fried, has his moon at 28 degrees Pisces. So he's someone else who has got Sati. So he's got Saturn on his moon, and he's had Neptune on his moon, and his moon is square Venus. So with Saturn on his moon, this is perhaps the peak. So he needs to be extra careful with Saturn square his Venus. I mean, there's always questions about his past sort of private life that do come up. The various his approach to that. I mean, I won't go into details. You can look it up. But so Saturn is really causing him a lot of problems. Maybe causing him problems with women. But Moon may be about his publicity, about his public profile, how popular he is. So and Sati is just a difficult period for him. And right now, he is in the middle of it. And finally, various former British Prime Minister Boris Johnson. He is out of politics. He was Prime Minister. He was a Conservative MP. He's not a Member of Parliament. He's got his sun at 28 degrees Gemini. Therefore, he's got Saturn square his sun. He's got Mercury and Venus sesquiquadrate his sun. So for him, this might be a difficult time. Maybe he had been considering a political comeback. It's a difficult time for Boris Johnson because at the moment the Conservative Party is falling apart. The Conservative Party just had another defection. This woman, what's her name, Suella Braverman, has just defected to Reform. As far as people are saying, Reform is just like Boris 2.0. So, but that's not true. I mean, Boris is not welcome in the Reform Party, I don't think, because Boris is associated with the Boris wave of immigration when he was Prime Minister, and so he's just seen by the Reformers as bad as everyone else. But perhaps this is going to be brought home to him with Saturn making a square to his sun, and with Mercury and Venus hitting it. So Boris Johnson might be someone to watch, but Boris Johnson has his moon in Scorpio, so there's a lot going on in Boris Johnson's life, and in terms of his attitudes and feelings that we don't know about. I don't think he's quite as pleasant as his bumptious persona would indicate. Anyway, that's it with Saturn and its semisquares to Mercury and Venus. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did enjoy this video, I'd be very grateful if you were to like it. If you're not subscribed, super grateful if you were to subscribe. If you want to buy me a coffee, there's a link in the description, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.